They called it a tragic accident, but I knew silence was never accidental in this world, especially when that silence was mine. I used to think music could save me. It was naive, romantic, even believing that ivory keys could protect a girl like me from the cruel crescendos of ambition and betrayal. But back then, I was just 17, and Vienna felt like a fairy tale scored in D minor. They called me the Crimson Waltz, a stage name chosen for the way my fingers danced in red gloves over the piano, graceful and haunting. Crowds rose for me, critics bowed, men tried to buy me, but I didn't care for any of that. All I ever wanted was to play free, honest, alone with the truth of sound. Then came him, Anton Elclair, the director with the wolf's smile and gold-plated promises. He heard me once at a student showcase and told me I wasn't meant for small rooms. He made me believe my music deserved bigger stages, and I was foolish enough to follow. The contract was long, full of elegant lies. I didn't understand clauses, only cadence. By the time I did, my name belonged to the label, and my compositions were someone else's initials. But betrayal never comes alone, not when power tastes like applause. The worst was that night in Prague. I remember the concert hall ornate chandeliers, a sea of tuxedos, the glint of expectation in their eyes. I sat at the Bendorfer Grand, heart trembling but steady, and then a crash, a hiss, and silence. Not the silence of a missed note. No, this was the silence that follows when your ears betray you. The silence of pain you cannot scream out, because you no longer hear your own voice. They said it was an electrical fault, a freak accident backstage. But Anton never visited me, not once. He released a press statement, replaced me with a blonde prodigy from Berlin, and paid off what remained of my contract. Everyone thought I was dead, if not in body, then in soul. And in a way, I was, because the Isadora who once believed in the purity of sound died that night. But something else lived, something colder, more precise, like a metronome ticking inside me, not to keep tempo, but to count down. To the moment I would return. To compose not just music, but justice. They never expected to see me again, and truthfully, neither did I. 3 years passed since the night silence fell upon my world. I left Vienna without saying goodbye, without packing my trophies or faded concert posters. I left as a ghost, and my own story disappeared into a world where no one remembered my name, but I remembered every note, every betrayal. In Budapest, I became someone else, Izara Klein, modest, careful, forgettable, a name that didn't echo in theater halls or music festivals. I wore glasses with thick frames, tied my hair into low buns, and worked part-time in a dusty piano repair shop owned by an old blind man who never asked for names, only trust. He taught me how to listen again, not with ears, but with the weight of wood, the trembling of string. I learned to feel the music instead of hearing it. I rebuilt old Steinways, tuned broken uprights in orphanage halls, and let the city's rhythm carry me quietly forward. But the quiet never lasts. One rainy Thursday, while adjusting the hammer action of a 1960 seconds Bechstein, I saw it, a headline on a newspaper left behind by a customer. Elclair Music announces new international youth competition, the Crimson Waltz Award. My name, my stolen legacy, turned into a brand, a trophy, a lie. They thought I was gone forever, and in my absence, they turned my pain into a product. I didn't cry. I simply set the wrench down, wiped the dust from my fingers, and walked out into the rain. That night, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in 3 years. Inside was my red pair of performance gloves, still folded, still perfect, still waiting. I slipped them on not for the warmth, but for the memory of who I used to be. Then, I turned on the old electric keyboard and played a single chord. E minor. It trembled beneath my hands. Not quite in tune like me, but I smiled anyway, because I knew this wasn't the end. It was the prelude. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner of my small apartment, the walls lined with old sheet music and shelves filled with broken metronomes, cracked tuning forks, and forgotten cassette tapes. The rain tapped like fingertips on my windows, and the city hummed in quiet indifference. Budapest had become my haven, my exile, but now it would be the place where I prepared for war. The next morning, I walked to the conservatory, not the grand one where I had once studied in Vienna. No, this one was quieter, more modest, tucked behind a bakery and a used bookstore. It had a practice room with a grand piano so old its ivory keys had worn down to bone. But it was enough. I requested a rental pass under my new name, Izara Klein. The attendant didn't blink. To them, I was no one. I liked it that way. For hours, I played in silence, not because I had to. My hearing had returned slowly, painfully, over the past 2 years, but because I wanted to remember what it was like when all I had was feeling. No applause, no critics, just vibration, resonance, vengeance. I started with the basics: scales, arpeggios. My hands, stiff from neglect, trembled at first, but the muscle memory remained, like an old scar reopening to reveal something raw underneath. Then I moved to the piece they had stolen. The crimson waltz. It was mine. Every measure, every breath between bars, every decrescendo that dissolved like fog in the morning. I had written it in secret when I was 17, played it once in a private audition for someone I trusted. And he took it, published it, branded it, and never once mentioned my name. Now, they were naming an entire youth competition. After it, I played it through once, hands shaking with rage. The second time, I played it as if I were him, smug, arrogant, calculated. And the third time, I played it as me, broken, alive, dangerous. When I finished, I looked up at the mirror. Above the piano, Izara stared back at me, but behind the lenses and the quiet blouse and the tucked hair, I saw Isadora Van again, the girl they buried, the woman who returned. Tomorrow, I would submit a performance clip under a pseudonym to the El Claire Foundation's Open Artist Registry. They were seeking judges, mentors, guest performers for the televised final round of the competition. They would choose me because I was no longer a prodigy. I was a ghost with perfect pitch, and I was coming home. The audition hall hadn't changed. Still the same arched ceilings, the same velvet curtains that swallowed sound too hungrily. Still the smell of varnished wood, sweat, and arrogance. But now, I stood on the other side of the curtain, not as a hopeful student, but as a judge. The irony was sharp enough to taste. There were 6 of us on the adjudicating panel. 4 men I didn't know, 1 woman who looked like she'd sold her soul to Chanel No. 5, and me, Izara Klein, the ghost with perfect posture. He entered on the second day, Elon Imrand, not as a performer. No, those days were beneath him. Now, he walked in flanked by assistants, all earpieces and clipboards, his coat flaring like a cape. He shook hands, smiled like a shark in silk, and when his eyes landed on me, he paused, just long enough for me to see the flicker. Confusion, then suspicion, then the very thing I'd waited years to see, fear, only a flicker, gone before anyone else could catch it. But I saw it. He extended his hand as if he didn't remember. Ah, and this must be our guest from the Spanish Conservatory, Miss Klein, was it? I didn't take his hand. Dr. Klein, I corrected softly, offering only a nod. I believe you've reviewed my thesis. The one on unauthorized derivations in 20th century piano compositions. His smile faltered. Just a beat. Fascinating work, he said. A bit bold, perhaps. I find truth often is, I replied. He moved on quickly, retreating to his seat at the back of the room like a wounded animal masking its limp. But I could feel it, the tension, the tightness in his shoulders, the way he avoided looking directly at me during the next 3 performers. I didn't need to expose him yet. That day would come. Today, I only needed one thing, to remind him I was alive. It started with a single note. Just one, hanging in the air like the breath before a confession. Then another. Then the melody unraveled itself in slow, aching strands so familiar I felt my throat tighten before I even realized why. The pianist on stage was a boy of maybe 19. Nervous fingers, trembling shoulders, eyes locked on the keys like they held the secret to his future. But what he played, it wasn't just any etude. It was mine, not a name, not officially. No manuscript bore my initials, no database linked the piece to me, but I knew every modulation, every inverted chord, every whispered pause between measures. I had written it in the old practice room, years ago. A secret composition, unfinished, unpolished, meant for no one but myself. And Elon had heard it, back then, when I was just a girl in a cardigan and braids, playing while he lingered outside the door with 1,000 compliments and an empty promise. He had stolen it, refined it, published it, took my half-born idea and dressed it up in his signature, paraded it around in concert halls, added flourishes to disguise its origin. But at its core it was still mine. I sat frozen, hands clenched on my lap, as the boy finished the piece and the judges murmured with approval. A bold choice, said one. Emran's nocturne in silence, underappreciated, but deeply expressive. Elon leaned back in his chair, smug and silent. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled, because that piece, that stolen lullaby from my past, was proof. And proof, in the world I now lived in, was everything. When the boy exited, I excused myself, walked calmly to the corridor, down to the archives, and pulled out a worn box from the shelf marked Alumni Submissions, 2015 to 2017. There, hidden, beneath layers of dust and forgotten names, was a demo CD mine, track 3, the same melody. Slower, rawer, but unmistakable. I closed my eyes, let the old ache surface, just for a moment. Then I tucked the CD into my coat pocket, straightened up, and returned to the hall. Let the games begin. The recording stayed in my pocket the entire night, its weight heavier than it should have been, more than plastic and memory. It was proof. It was power. And in a place like the conservatoire, built on prestige and secrets whispered in corridors lined with marble, power was the only language people truly understood. That evening, at the alumni dinner, I sat 3 seats away from Elon. He hadn't recognized me yet. Why would he? I was no longer the timid girl in the second row, the one who once stared at him like he hung the moon. I had cut my hair, changed my name, traded innocence for precision. The girl he destroyed was gone. Izara had taken her place. Miss Moreau, a man to my left said, glancing at my name badge. You're from Vienna? Originally, yes, I replied with a smile. I'm conducting a project on lost musical manuscripts, uncredited works, pieces that were stolen, orphaned, or silenced. Elon's fork paused in midair, a ripple in the water. I watched him carefully, without looking. Just a flicker of doubt in his eyes, nothing more. But I knew the seed had been planted. Later, in the lounge, I handed a sealed envelope to Madame Beauchamp, the director of the conservatoire and a woman known for her razor-sharp memory. A small curiosity from your archives, I said. Track 3 is of particular interest. She raised an eyebrow. Are you submitting something, Miss Moreau? Not exactly. Just setting the record straight. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A withheld number. You have my attention, said the voice on the other end. Elon. I didn't reply. Silence, after all, was the first note in every symphony. That day, I walked the long stone hallway of the conservatory with the confidence of someone who had finally returned home, not as a student, not as a victim, but as a conductor with her own score to settle. Let him feel what it's like to be watched, to not know when the blade will fall, to live with the unease of truth unraveling, one measure at a time, because I wasn't just here to reclaim what was mine, I was here to rewrite the ending. Toot vi, Cheng ta tip tch nhter su leng vi thang min. Izara, DYL Chapter 8. Chapter 8 The Forgotten No Tenji Kaith Entling L. Su Siki Kukh V Hin Tihal Mount. They say time heals, but whoever coined that lie clearly never returned to the place where their soul was broken. The conservatoire felt like a living ghost, same walls, same polished stairs, even the same stubborn warmth from the radiator under the window in Studio B. But I was different now. I was the haunting, not the haunted. As I slipped into the archive room, a flood of memories clawed at my chest. This was where Elon once cornered me after rehearsal. This was where he whispered promises he never meant to keep, and where he stole more than just melodies. I shook it off. Focus. I wasn't here for memories. I was here for evidence. My fingers traced the labels. 2005, 2006, 2007. There, I pulled the file. Inside were dusty folders, forgotten applications, and jury notes. Among them a CD, handwritten on it in my old script, Concerto for D minor student, I, Belarus. My breath caught. He hadn't erased it, just buried it, back in my rented flat. I placed the disc in the player. The melody filled the room like a ghost returning home. I remembered every note because I had lived inside it. It was mine. But here, in the records, it had no composer name, no credit, just a cold label, anonymous student work. I closed my eyes. He took everything. My work, my trust, my name. And now he was lecturing internationally, publishing books, mentoring young girls who probably didn't yet know the price of their admiration. He thought I'd never return. He thought I'd be silent forever. But the thing about a forgotten note is that when played at the right moment, it echoes louder than any overture. And now I had the key. There's a strange kind of silence that falls in a room when two people meet again, one who remembers everything, and one who pretends not to. I walked into the alumni soiree like I was made of smoke. My heels didn't click too loudly. My dress, simple and black, revealed nothing of my intention. Around me, chatter floated like champagne bubbles, effervescent, meaningless. Then I saw him, Victor Marceau, my former classmate, my once friend, and now apparently, head of the conservatoire's board of directors. He looked older, tired perhaps, but his smile still had that politician's gloss. He didn't recognize me, not immediately. That was the best part. Izara. Belarus, I said, extending my hand. His eyes flickered. A brief pause, and then came the smile, cautious. Well, I'll be damned. I heard you. Disappeared. Oh, I did. Into obscurity. It's surprisingly peaceful there. I smiled. Just enough. He shifted in place. I suppose you've heard about Elon's promotion? I nodded. Oh yes. International consultant, publishing a memoir. Very poetic for someone who used to steal notes from his students. The silence stretched. I could see it in his eyes, the panic. Because Victor knew. He always knew. Back then, he said nothing. Just turned away when I cried in the hallway, when Elon berated me behind closed doors, when my name vanished from every concert list. But now he was trapped. I leaned in, voice calm and steady. Don't worry, Victor. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to play. He frowned. Play? I tapped my clutch lightly. There's a scholarship concert tomorrow. They needed a last-minute guest performer. I offered. His face paled. Because that stage was Elon's, and I was about to take it back. There are moments in life when the silence before a performance is louder than any applause. Tonight was one of those moments. The grand piano sat under the spotlight, sleek, polished, waiting. Like it remembered me. The same Steinway I once practiced on until my fingers bled. The same one I had been banned from playing the night I was humiliated and erased from the conservatory's concert lineup. And now I stood before it again. In a black velvet gown, hair swept back, heart steady, the announcer's voice echoed through the auditorium. Our next guest performer is a former student, returning to the very stage she once trained on. Please welcome Izara Belarus. A polite clap, confused whispers. I caught a glimpse of Elon in the third row, brows furrowed, lips tightening, and Victor, whispering into his phone like that could save them now. I sat down slowly, adjusted the bench. My fingers hovered above the keys, and I played, not the scheduled piece, not the tame, donor-friendly Rachmaninoff arrangement they were expecting. No, I played the lost movement, the forbidden composition I had written at 17. The one Elon plagiarized and published under his name in France's most prestigious music journal. The one Victor had told me to forget, for the sake of harmony. Tonight, it returned note by note, truth by truth. It wasn't just a performance. It was a confrontation, a reclaiming. With every crescendo, I poured in the betrayal, the silencing, the gaslighting. With every decrescendo, I stripped them of their polished illusions. By the final chord, the auditorium had gone completely still. No applause, just breathless reckoning. I stood. I composed that at 17, I said into the mic. Some of you may have read it under another name. I smiled, turned, walked off stage. Behind me, the audience erupted, not in applause, but in stunned chaos. Elon was on his feet. Victor was gone. But I was finally heard. I didn't return to the audience. I didn't linger in the hallway or look for praise. I simply walked out of the auditorium, letting the echo of my performance dismantle the empire they had built. The air outside was sharp and clean. Paris at midnight, its streets still awake, as if it too had witnessed something sacred. I walked until the music inside me quieted, until I no longer heard my name whispered with disbelief behind me, but I knew it had begun. The unraveling. By morning, it was all over the news. Conservatoire scandal, original composition stolen from teenage prodigy, Victor Leroux's research grants under investigation, anonymous whistleblower leaks years of misconduct emails. Anonymous, of course, being me. Months ago, I had begun collecting every thread, every lie, every buried document. Now they were out in the open, sent to every journalist who had once ignored my messages, now scrambling to be the first to break the truth. Victor's company shares began to drop. Elon's publishers pulled his upcoming book. The conservatory issued a public apology. Carefully worded, of course, as if shame was just a PR issue. But I didn't need them to confess. I didn't need their guilt to validate my pain. I had my name, and I had my silence. Not the silence they forced on me years ago, but the one I chose. Now quiet dignity, resolute and whole, I left Paris within the week, not in disgrace, but with a single suitcase and a handwritten letter from a girl who said my music helped her survive her depression. That was worth more than any standing ovation. Now, in a sunlit village near Lyon, I teach music in a school that has no concert hall but a garden with violets, and children who still believe sound can heal. I still play, but not to prove anything. I play to remember who I was, and who I became, because revenge doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes, it means restoration, and I chose to restore myself.